Okay, beautiful. We are holding on Ted Zayin Amud Bet, about 10 lines up from the, or 8 lines up from the start of the wide lines and the English. We are on 16b3 in the Art Scroll edition of the Talmud Bavli. So, um, we're going to start the Gemara. We're going to backtrack slightly. We spoke a little bit about this last week. We're going to backtrack slightly in order to get the full topic in one sitting. And we're in the middle of talking about the carbon Chagiga and the Olat Re'iyam, and these are the carbonot that we bring up on Yom Tov. And one of the dinim is you're supposed to do smicha, which is usually on a carbon that a person brings, whether it's a chatat or an asham or a shlomim. He's supposed to lean on the animal with his full strength. And if it's a sin offering that he's leaning, he's saying vidui, he's saying his confession on the animal. And if it's a shlomim, then he says shebach, praise to Hashem, and he leans on it. And then right away, they do the shechita. And we saw machlokes in the Mishnah that this Gemara is based on. It was a 5-generational machlokes between the Nasi and the Avbeitin, sometimes the Nasi, sometimes the Avbeitin, who said, yes, do smicha, or no, don't do smicha. It was machlokes in the Nasi and the Avbeitin, in each generation, one way or the other. And now, what was the reason for that machloket? So, the Gemara in Masechet Be'ah tells us there's two ways to explain the machloket. One way to explain the machloket, when the Torah says you have to do smicham, right? It says it by shlomim nadava, something that you donate. It never said it by shlomim that's a choiva, at the karbanis that are a chova. So since it's not a chatat or an asham, it's not a sin offering, but rather it is a shlomim or olat riyam, there is no din. There is no halachic din to do smicha. And therefore, you don't have to do smicha because there's no chayva, and therefore you cannot do it on Yom Tov because there's no chava. You don't have to do it, so you can't do it. And the others hold, no, there is a chava. And that's one way to understand the machloket. And the second way to understand the machloket was, no, everyone holds you have to do smicha. And the question is, can you do smicha on Yom Tov? And the way we're understanding the machloket is that must I do the smicha prior to the shechita, immediately take it right away, or can I do the smicha on erev Yom Tov? Okay, so that's the machloket. If I can do it smicha on erev Yom Tov, then I should not do it on Yom Tov. If I cannot do the smicha on erev Yom Tov, then I have to do it on Yom Tov. So, is smicha have to be taken for shechita? Must it be done right before shechita? Okay, so this introduction, let's get in to the Gemara. 16b3, Amar Rav Shemin bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Lo'olam, al tiyeh shevut, chala be'enecha. A person should never take a shvut. A shvut is a rabbinic prohibition on Shabbat in order to help with the shevet, in order to help with the Shabbat menucha, in order to help with the resting. The rabbis put in certain decrees, certain derabanans about Shabbat, and this is called shivut. Lo'olam al tiyeh shivut kala be'enecha. It should never be light in your eyes. This whole smicha business, the problem that could potentially be with smicha is all a derabanan. Which derabanan? The derabanan say a person cannot ride on an animal on Shabbat. Why not? Because if he rides an animal on Shabbat, he might want to come to direct the animal. He needs a stick to hit the animal. So he'll see a tree that a branch is sticking out, and he'll be tailish, separating and being kaitzer, separating the branch from the tree, and then use that to direct the animal. And because of that, the Rabbanan said in Gezerah, a person cannot ride an animal, not just ride an animal, but not to be mishtamish with an animal, not to use an animal on Shabbat. And now, smicha is when you're laying on it with your full koach, you're using it. And therefore, that would be an isser of mishtamish based on the Rabbanan. And this Rabbanan is what the Azbeitin and the Nasi for so many generations were arguing about. And the Gedolei Hador were arguing about this Dirabanan. And the Gemara says, Pshita, obviously they're going to be arguing about it. What do you mean? Dirabanan is a very important thing. Why would I think Dirabanan is not important? Oh, you know why? Shavut mitzvah itzrachele. Perhaps we would say, no, it's just a rabbanan, it's for a mitzvah, it's okay. No. to tell you even this is the machlokes. Nami Pshita, this is also known because the Gemara in Beya talks about a bunch of shvus, there's a bunch of rabbanans that apply even on Yom Tov on Shabbat. So I already know that just because it's a mitzvah, right? It's a mitzvah, and I can do it. But no, it's a shvus, you cannot do it on Yom Tov on Shabbat because even though it's a mitzvah, you cannot do it because of a shvut. We have that in Gemara in Beya, in Mishnah in Beya. So the Gemara says, no. You know why Rabbi Yochanan is telling us this? Remember, there's two ways to explain this machlokes in Masechtas Beya. Is it a machloket about the din of smicha bekufa? Is that an actual needing or not needing smicha? Is that the machloket? So Rabbi Yochanan is telling us, no, that's not the machloket. That's not where the Nasi and the Abeita were arguing for 5 generations. Their machloket was in the smicha. Their machloket was in the shvut. Right? Not that there's a chayva smicha, not there's an obligation to do leaning, but rather on the rabbanon of doing a smicha on Yom Tov. Now, it's not just the rabbanon of smicha on Yom Tov, but rather doing the takef, right? Doing it right away. That was the question. But based on Shabbat, because even the ones who say you don't have to do it right away, obviously, right away is better than waiting from the day before. Right? So because of Shabbat, therefore they say to do it the day before because it's okay to do that way. Interesting though, the Rabbeinu Chananel understands the machlokes a little bit different. Rabbeinu Chananel says, this is in the Rabbeinu Chananel on the right margin of the Hebrew Gemara of Rabbeinu Chananel, and on the bottom, last 3 lines. Okay, here, Rabbi Yochanan holds the very hakol beinon teka was micha shchita. He holds that everybody really holds you need to have smicha right away before shchita. B'chipligi, b'shvus pligi, hani osri, b'hani shari. He says that the machlokes is on the shvut if I should allow it or not. Okay, not that it could be if it could be done prior day or must be on that day. That's the way Rashi understands. That's what we always understood the machlokes. Rabbeinu Chanan understands the machlokes a little different. So Rabbi Yochanan says, no, everybody holds smicha teikev l'shchita. You need it right away. Only question is it mutter or not to do? And some say yes, some say no. And that is what the machlokes is according to Rabbeinu Chanan. Our machlokes is a similar machlokes. The way we understand the Gemara and Rashi, the way we understand the Gemara is that the machlokes is, can I do smicha on Yom Tov? And one says yes, one says no. And the reason why he says no is because you can do it the day before. Amar Rabbi Bar Chama. Shema mina. We learn from this sugya. Smicha bekol koichai be'inan. Smicha requires real, full leaning. The entire power of the person has to lean onto the head of the animal. The if you think he only has to touch it, let him touch it. And that's it. And that's smicha. And then there's no problem, right? Because then he's not being mishtamish. He's not using the animal. I'm not using the animal, I'm just touching it, right? Muksa in general, right, is only a problem of carrying it or moving it, right? If I touch a car on Shabbat, I didn't do anything wrong. I can touch the car. Obviously, I'm not making any lights or anything go on, right? Just touching the car. The problem is when I make the car move, okay? Similarly, here the animal, when am I using it? When I'm pushing on it and moving it and doing something with it. But if I'm just putting my hands on it, it's not a problem, right? It's not a problem. So you must be, if the fact the whole smicha is an issue, it must be that it's done with full koach, because otherwise it would not have been any issue. Okay. So far, this is everything we saw. And continuing to see everything we already saw last week. Well, let's continue. Meitvei. I have a question. There is a brayta, and there's a machlokes about ladies doing a smicha. It says daber b'nei Yisrael. It says speak to the children of Israel, and b'nei means the boys. Now, many times in the Torah it says b'nei, and it actually means both the ladies and the men. Most of the mitzvahs, like all the do not do, all the prohibitions, right? They're usually applied to both. And it says daber el b'nei Yisrael. For whatever reason, the Malbim goes through why certain cases would be otherwise. So over here it says daber el b'nei Yisrael v'samach, and they should lean, right? B'nei Yisrael samchin They benot Yisrael smochot. The children of Israel, they do the smicha, and not the ladies of Israel. They don't do the smicha. That's the stock of the Tanakama. It seems to be the Chachamim, and that's what they say. Ladies do not do the smicha. Interestingly enough, both the Ramban and Tosafot point out that number one, the woman could bring the carbon. The problem is not bringing the carbon. The woman could bring the carbon. Not only the woman can bring the carbon, the woman says, "Oh, she can do the shechita. She can also do shechita. She can do shechita. She could slaughter the carbon, right? That's not a problem. Nashim can do that. It's just on the page. Right? That they can do it. For some reason, the smicha seems to be that smicha is what they were miyayit. They said no, they can't do. And maybe because someone explained that smicha, like leaning on the animals, like it's not a womanly thing to do, and therefore they're not to do it. And from the drashot they have, they learned that women cannot do it. That's the Tanakh. Rabbi Yaisi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, Benot Yisrael, Simochot Reshut. They have permission to do the leaning. They have Reshut. Now, how do you understand Reshut? So the Ravad and Rashi and Kulin, they both understand Reshut means that when they're doing it legit mitzvah. They're doing a legit mitzvah. It's a real mitzvah. And if they do and if you allow people to do smicha on Yom Tov, right, for the karbanot, and the woman's bringing the karban, she can also do the smicha because it's a legit mitzvah. Tosafot and Rashi elsewhere understands it. No. It's just a token smicha. We're allowing them to do something, but it's not really smicha, and it won't be dochet Yom Tov. You cannot do it on Yom Tov. And then we have the Tanakama. Right? And the Tanakama's explanation was no, they cannot do it at all. All right. So that was the machloket of doing that. Now, some say, why do I have to exclude a woman from the mitzvah of smicha? The mitzvah of smicha is a mitzvah shezman grama, right? It's a mitzvah that's shezman grama. And that's maybe why they shouldn't be able to do it. So someone explained that it's not, but it's a possibility. In addition, some want to say if a woman does a mitzvah that she's not commanded to do, it might be considered Baal Tosef, that she's doing something extra more than the Torah commanded here. Lamai says the Rambam paskins that l'halacha, a woman is not to do smicha, and I'm just going to read to you the Rambam's lashon, the Rambam's language when it comes to this smicha business here for ladies. Everybody does smicha beyond their animals before bringing it up as a carbon chutz, except and the woman. They don't do smicha. So the Rambam passes like the Tanakama in this sugya. Okay, and now. And now comes the halacha l'maaseh. Can women do mitzvahs aseh shezman groma? Can a woman do mitzvahs aseh shezman groma? So the ma'aseh we say that at most times women can do those mitzvot, and then the question real boils in: can they say the bracha on the mitzvah? And that's the Tosafot on the bottom of the page over here that says if they do it, right, we're not in mamachin b'yadam. We don't stop them. So the lady wants to make the bracha, we don't stop them. Whereas the Rambam holds, no, ladies cannot say the bracha, and that's the machloket. It turns into machloket Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah goes with Ramah says a woman could say the bracha, and that's the Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. And Tosfos says based on the Ramah, or the Ramah says based on Tosfos is that the woman could say the bracha. Interestingly enough, there are some achronim of the Sephardic poskim, like the Chidah, the Tzion, that seem to say that a woman had a minhag to say the bracha, right? She has what to rely on, and she can say the bracha if that was the minhag. And the Al Yosef says, but new girls that are growing up, we should teach them correctly. They're not to make the bracha. Interestingly, when we're learning this morning at Shachris, we're doing the halachos, and the question was, what about Hallel? What about how on Hanukkah we're going to say all 8 days with the bracha? Hallel Gamar, Hallel Shalom, complete the Hallel with the bracha for us before and after. What about a woman? The woman has dinim of hadlaka, right? She has to light. If she's living alone, she lights it for herself. If her husband's not home, she lights. She has a dinim hadlaka. She's part of the nation being saved during Hanukkah. Can she say halal? The Yalkut Yosef says no. She is not to say the bracha on halal. She can say halal, but she cannot say the bracha on halal, not before, not after. And the Yalkut Yosef goes even further, that perhaps Bnei Ashkenaz would also agree with this. The Bnei Ashkenaz should also not say a bracha, even though they usually do say a bracha when it comes to Bishus Zish's Magrama. Why? Because maybe they hold when you're doing something, when there's an asiyah, when there's doing something, that's when you can say a bracha. But if you're just saying words, maybe you should not say the bracha on a mitzvah Zish's Magrama like halal. Allah, he says if they do it, they have what to rely on. The Sephardic woman should definitely not say the bracha on the halal. That's something that they should not be doing. Okay, so that's the same thing with the Tkiyah Shofar bracha on the Shofar bracha on the Esrei, bracha on the Sukkah, right? All these things. Now, interestingly enough to note, the Yalkut Yosef in Hilchot Pesach says that on Seder night, the woman should say halal and with a bracha. The woman should say halal and with a bracha. And all the mitzvahs of the night of Pesach apply to the woman as well, including the halal, which is part of the Seder. Therefore, he says they should say before the men come home, right? They should say halal with the bracha. Very interesting sugya on halal with the bracha, which is magrama, and mitzvahs that noshim can do or not do. Just mentioned there are some mitzvahs that women preferably should not do. Havdalah, they should always try to get a man. If they can't, they could say it themselves. Another one that we really don't want them to ever be doing is Kiddush HaChodesh, right? To do Kiddush HaLevana. We don't want them to be doing that for other reasons. And there are others that are escaping my mind at the moment. Okay. Tefillin, right? Tefillin is a big one. Tzitzis, right? Okay, fine. I'm Rabbi Yossi. Sachli Abelazar told me a story. Pamachat hayalanu egel shezivchei shalomim. One time they were bringing the calf that was a shlomim offering. They brought it to the lady section of the samchol of nashim. The woman did smicha on it. Not because there was smicha, because nashim have to do smicha. Eila kedei la'asot nachat ruach l'nashim, in order to give the ladies some satisfaction. Now there is a there's a little problem over here. The Rambam says, where do you have to do smicha? Where does smicha have to be done in the mikdash? There has to be a place of where it should be done. So the Rambam says, I'm going to read, I'm going to find the lashon of the Rambam. Give me 1 second over here. The Rambam says as follows: Hasmicha haita nasis ba'azara, has to be done in the azara. B'kshera mishar niknar hasamach la'azara v'lifnim. It has to be done in the azara, in the courtyard where the Yisraelim could go. And a little bit beforehand, there's a place called Shar Niknor. That's where smicha could be done. This way, that the shchita will be done in the azara miyad achar smicha. So you wanted the smicha has to be done in the azara or nearby the azara, and therefore it could come right away to shchita, right? Smicha taking the shchita, and then this Rambam that says it has to be done there. So it's a question: when are they bringing this animal to the Ezras Nashim, which is outside the Shar Niknor, which is not in the right place to do smicha? And if it was their carbon, if they have to bring the carbon, the halacha would be you would bring the woman into the azara to do smicha. So they want to learn that this wasn't even their carbon. It's not even their carbon. Why are they doing smicha? So let's go a little bit into this Gemara. That it needs full power. 1 second, if you have to push on the animal, and it's not their animal, and they're not really doing smicha, it's outside the place you're supposed to do it, then what are they doing? They're being mishtamish, they're doing work with the animal, which you're not allowed to do with the carbon. You're not allowed to work with it. They must have done done smicha without the full strength. So maybe smicha doesn't need full strength. No, maybe really, smicha needs full strength. But the Amrlahu akfu yadachu. But here in this case, they told the woman, don't push hard. Just put your hands on it. If then they really do smicha, they ain't no smicha klal. Say that it wasn't smicha at all. Rabbi Chada ve'oid kama Chada delayed from the smicha klal. What's going on over here? The truth is, the woman had no business in doing smicha over here. The woman wasn't the woman's carbon. They did smicha outside the azar, outside the Shar Niknor, so it wasn't even real smicha. Not only that, they told them not to even really lean on it, just to put their hands on it. Why was this whole sham, this whole facade, this whole thing done? We wanted to give the ladies a little bit of a feeling that they're part of this carbon, right? So really, they have no need to this, but we want them to have that feeling. We want them to have a good feeling. And therefore, they did this little bit of a game over here so they would have this feeling that they were part of the carbon. I think over here is a big shalom bias lesson, right? A lot of times we as men, very rational, very logical, we say, why do I have to go there? Why do I have to do this? There's no time, no this, no that, extra money wasting. What's the point, right? I think Mark tells us, yeah, the whole thing was a charade. The whole thing was a sham. It was all fake. They weren't doing no smicha. Just put their hands on it. It was outside the Azara. It wasn't even their animal. And yet we did it all. Why? In order to please them, in order to give them satisfaction. So sometimes it's okay to waste some time and money in order to bring shalom bayit. And someone mentioned, if he realizes the goal of bringing the shalom bayit, that he realizes he didn't waste any time or money. He invested, right? A very interesting takeaway from this Gemara. Okay, Amar Papa, Shema Mina Stadin Asurin. There's a machloket. If when the Rabbanan said I can't ride the animal and I can't use the animal, does that mean the regular way of using it, which is usually the back, below the package, is riding the animal? Or does it mean even the sides of the animal, which is really not the regular way of using it? It's a machloket. So from here we see that its side is also usher, even the non-regular part of using the animal. Why? Because if I would say that the tztadim mutarin, that to use the side is mutter, the head is considered a side because it's not where usually the part you use to travel or to carry packages or stuff like that. So it would be mutar. So why don't you let me do it? Teach me that what? Tzadin are also. The Gemara says, not really. Tzadin really could be mutar, even though halacha we say tzadin asurin, but there's not proof from this case. Why? Rav Ashi Omar, I feel temet tzadin mutarin called the hadei gaba because the head is on the level of the back, right? So then it's definitely going to be also, even though it's considered a side. But since it's on the level of the back, sometimes the package extends, sometimes you sit a little bit up, a little down. And therefore, it's considered usher, even though it's considered a tzad because it's on the level of the back. Okay, so that closes off that sugya. And now we're getting into another topic. This is the topic of bringing the korbanot on Yom Tov. So it's not that simple to bring korbanot on Yom Tov. There is stuff that you have to do. Some halachot, such as the shechita, right? Killing the animal, chayvo, whatever you want to call shechita is. But then when it comes to Yom Tov, there is an exception of the malachos, which is I can do stuff that are for food, right? The last steps of food preparation, as it says in the Torah. What you're going to do for food, that's what you can do on the Yom Tov. Now, there is the machloket. Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel. What does lachem mean for you? Bet Shammai takes it very literally. Lachem is for you. Anything you're going to eat is fine. And what do they exclude with that? Lachem v'loy ligavoa. But if I'm bringing a carbon that's not for me to eat, it's not for people to eat, it's all going to go up straight to Hashem, like the olat re'iyah that I'm bringing up on Yom Tov, then I cannot bring it on Yom Tov. Because it's just for me I can do stuff to eat, but not legivoa. Beit Hillel says, no, lachem means for me, for my needs, but not for the dog and not for the guy. But yes, for the Mizbeach. Yes, for Hashem. So it includes the Gavoa. So there's a machloket. Can I bring up the Ola, Re'iyah, the special Ola offering that I have to bring on Yom Tov? Can I bring it on Yom Tov? According to Beit Shammai, no. According to Beit Hillel, yes. And according to Rashi, Beit Shammai says not just the Olat Re'iyah, but the Olat Re'iyah always comes together with the Korban Chagiga. And since it's a package deal, therefore, if I cannot bring the Olat Re'iyah on Yom Tov, I cannot bring the Korban Chagiga on Yom Tov also. Which Korban could I bring on Yom Tov? I could bring the Shalmei Simcha, the extra meat that I need for Yom Tov. That I could bring because that's really just for me, and it's not part and packaged with the Olat Re'iyah. Although Tosafot argues with this and says, no, Beit Shammai would just not let an Ola, but he would let the Korban Chagiga. That's Tosafot and Rashi. But now let's get into the Mishnah. Beit Shammai says, Mivi'in shelamin ve'ein tzomchim aleim. We bring shlamim, according to Rashi, the Shalmei Simcha, according to Tosfot, even the Korban Chagiga, ve'ein tzomchim aleim. Remember, Beit Shammai said we don't do smicha. Do smicha the day before. We don't do smicha on Yom Tov. Aval olot. We don't bring the ola, right? Because it's for Hashem. I'm not eating it, so therefore I cannot do the malacha on Yom Tov. And according to Rashi, this includes the Korban Chagiga. Maybe now Beit Hillel says, "Mevein shlamim ve'olot v'somchim aleihim." We bring the ola and the Korban Chagiga and the Shalmei Simcha, and you do smicha. All of it on Yom Tov you can do. All of it is mutar. All of it is doche Yom Tov. Okay, so major machloket Beit Shammai Beit Hillel. What can be done? What can be brought up on the Yom Tov day? Atzeret. Now, Atzeret means Shavuot. Atzeret usually means, it's usually referred to as the last day of the Chag, like Shmini Chag Atzeret Hazeh. So why is Shavuot known as the last day? Because it's part of Pesach. Pesach started the process. And on Shavuot, we got the Torah, the reason for the redemption. And therefore, Shavuot is known as Atzeret. The Torah calls it Atzeret. Every time Chazal use Atzeret, it means Shavuot. Atzeret, Shechal Liyot Be'erev Shabbat. So if the Yom Tov of Shavuot was now on a Friday, okay? So according to Beit Shammai, it's Friday, Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, according to Beit Shammai, I cannot bring the Ola Re'iyah. I cannot bring the Ola. According to Rashi, that includes the Korban Chagiga. I cannot bring it on Friday. And guess what? I cannot bring it on the next day either because it is Shabbat. So the day I'm going to bring it next is on Sunday. Atzeret shechal yom erev Shabbat. Beit Shammai omrim Yom Tevoach achar Shabbat. I bring the korbanot on Sunday. Ubeit Hillel omrim ein la Yom Tevoach achar Shabbat. What are you talking about? There is no day of slaughter after after Shabbat. Rather, I bring it all on Yom Tov. It's Friday. Friday is Friday. Friday is not Shabbat. Therefore, I can bring my korbanot. On Shabbat, everyone agrees you don't bring your private korbanot. Now, the korbanot that is for Yom Tov, like it says in Parshas Pinchas, all the Musafim, and the regular korban tamid, and the korbanot for Shabbat, that we bring. We're talking about our own personal korbanot, korban riyah, korban chagiga, shalmei chagiga. We definitely do not bring them up on Shabbat. Focus is on Yom Tov, but on Shabbat, definitely not. So, says Beit Hillel, we do it all on Friday. Umodim she'im chal yom Shabbat. Then if the Yom Tov of Shavuot fell on Shabbat, right? According to Beit Hillel, also I cannot bring any korbanot, private korbanot on that day because it's Shabbat. So then Yom Tevoach achar Shabbat. So then the day of slaughter would be on Sunday. Now there is a little problem with having the day of slaughter on Sunday. The reason is it says in the Torah that we start to count the Sfirah from the day after Shabbat. And the Tzdukim and the reformers and the Sadducees of the day, they held, the day after Shabbat means you always start counting Sfirah on Sunday. Sunday to Sunday for 7 weeks. And then you have the celebration of, on a Sunday, you have Shavuot. That's the way the Tzdukim understand it. So now we're having the slaughter on Sunday, even though the Chag was actually on Friday or Shabbat. Now, according to Beit Shammai, it's Friday, or according to Beit Hillel, the Shabbat. Now the day of slaughter would be on Sunday. The Tzdukim might get extra happy and thinking, they're holding like us. So therefore, certain halachot were put into place to show them that it wasn't the way they thought. Ein kohen gadol mitlabesh bechelav. According to Rashi, the Kohen Gadol does not walk around in Yom Tov clothing on that day. According to Tosfot, the Kohen Gadol should not even show up to the Mikdash and wear his big day kahuna, because that's something he usually did on Yom Tov. And we don't want the Tzdukim to think that that what's it called? That it's a Yom Tov because we're doing the slaughtering that day. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol does not show up for the avodah. Umutarin behesped uvta'anit. And even though usually, if your day of a slaughter is the day you bring all the korbanot, that's the day you would not say a hesped. You would not make a ta'anit on this Sunday, even though you're bringing the korbanot. You could. Shalol kayem divrei haomrim atzeret achar Shabbat. If you don't want to fulfill those who say that that Shavuot is always on a Sunday, so therefore we make it clear that it's not Shavuot by not bringing the Kohen Gadol in, by making ta'anit and making hespeds. So this way people will know it is not. It's not like the way of these reformers. Okay, so that's a very important way to make that distinction to show them that. Okay. Now we said that if you couldn't bring the korban on Friday, right? According to Beit Shammai, you bring it on Sunday. According to if you can't bring it on Shabbat because it's Yom Tov is on Shabbat, so then you would bring it on Sunday. How do I know that I have this makeup period to bring the korbanot? How do I know that I can bring the Shavuot korbanot for the whole week afterwards, for that day, and then 6 days afterwards, 7 days total? Shnemar. Because it says Sukkot. It compares matzah, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos. So we compare Shavuot to Chag of Pesach. And we know by Pesach you have 7 days, because it says you can bring the korban in the Chagiga for 7 days. So you know that by Pesach. So you compare it to Shavuot. You can also bring it for all 7 days. The Gemara says 1 second, but maybe compare it to Chag Sukkot. By Sukkot, you have 8 days where you can bring it, even on Shmini Chag Atzeret. So maybe you should also have 8 days, right? The day of and 7 days afterwards. The Gemara says Shmini Regel L'Pnei Atzmahu. Shmini Atzeret is its own little world. You can't really learn from it. It's its own separate regal. A more the Amr Shmini Regel Pnei Atzmahu. No, Shmini Atzeret is only a regal for itself. Hani mili le'inyan pazar kashev. It's only for 6 halachot. There are 6 halachot where Shmini Atzeret is considered its own holiday. Really, it is somewhat part of Sukkot. What are the 6 things that is considered its own holiday? Pazer kasher. Pazer. The pay stands for pais, which was it's a new lottery system. So usually there are 24 mishmarot. It really started with 8 mishmarot of Kohanim, 4 from Elazar, 4 from Itamar. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu had it. Later on, at David Melech's time, it switched into 24 watches instead of 8. And every week, 1 watch would work. 1 group of Kohanim would work, and this way about 2 times per year. But on Yom Tov, everyone would show up, and they would split up the avoda amongst themselves. And on Sukkot, since there were so many karbanos, every family would do a karban. And it ended up most families did 3 out of the 24 watches. 20, most of them did 3, and 1 did 2. And 1 did 2 of them did 2. So you would think maybe Shmini Atzeres is a continuation and should just continue. No, there's a new pious. There's a new lottery on Shmini Atzeret. Not connected to the lottery of what the Kohanim would do on Yom Tov from Sukkot, but rather new to Shmini Atzeret. Zman, Zayin is for Zman. We say Shechianu. Rego, in the Tefillah, we say Shmini Chag Atzeret Azeh. Right? We don't say Chag Sukkot anymore. Karban, the Karbanos are entirely different. It's not in the same pattern of Sukkot. It's a whole different Karban. Shir, the Shir Shel Yom, what the Kohanim would say, what the Leviim would say in the Duchan. Right? It would no longer be about Sukkot, but rather Lametzeach al Hasheminit. And then Beracha was the people would bless the king in that day, right? Because it says in the Malachim, Sefer Malachim, that that on the Shmini Atzeret, when they were going back home afterwards, it says that on the 8th day, King Solomon sent them home, and they blessed King Solomon. They blessed Shlomo HaMelech. So therefore, they make the bracha on the king on Shmini Chag Atzeret, and that was the din special for Shmini Chag Atzeret, and therefore that is considered part of the. That's what makes it independent. But avala inyan tashlumin, but for tashlumin derishonhu, it really includes the 8th day. Why? We saw before that there on Daf Test there is a pasuk that says Uchodesh HaShevi'i Uchagotem Oto Chag LaHashem B'Chodesh HaShevi'i, right? Something similar to that. And we say, oh, where's the Chodesh HaShevi'i? We already know 7 days. Oh, the Chodesh HaShevi'i comes to include Shmini Chag HaTeretz, which is still in the 7th month. So therefore, Misha Lo Chag B'Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Chayge Et Kol HaRegel B'Yom Tov HaAcharoin. He also brings it on the day of Shmini Atzeret. So you do have 8 days. So why don't you compare it to this? So tefasta meruba loy tefasta. Tefasta muat tefasta. If you have 2 ways to learn, one way to extend the days and one way to lower the days, you should go with the lowering. Because if you go with too much, you might be wrong and then be doing it wrong. But if you go with the lower, you'll always be right. So tefasta muat tefasta. That's why we go that way. And therefore, the halacha is for 7 days total, then you have tashlumin. Then why is Chag HaSukkos in this pasuk? Chag HaMatzos and Chag HaShuros, we know we have 7 days total to bring the carbon. Well, Chag HaSukkos, why is that there if you have 8? La'akushay l'Chag HaMatzos. Ma Chag HaMatzos ta'on lina, av Chag HaSukkos ta'on lina. Just like Matzah Chag Pesach, you need to stay the night in Jerusalem. Av Chag HaSukkot, you also have to stay the night in Jerusalem. But Hasan ben Nahon, how do you know by Pesach you have to stay the night? It did because it says Ufanita b'boker, and in the morning, then you can turn back and go to your tents. So they point out very, very, very good. It doesn't mean I stay just the Seder night or the first night and then I go home, because no one can go back home on Yom Tov, right? Because there's a tchum issue. Oh, maybe it's only Durabanan. Yes, tchum is usually Durabanan, but at 12,000 mil, it's already considered a Doraita. Most people are going back that much, so therefore it is a Doraita. Therefore, the Torah says you cannot go back on Yom Tov Day. So what are we talking about? That the first night of Chol HaMoed, you have to stay in Yerushalayim. You can only start heading back on the first day of Chol HaMoed. The first night of Chol HaMoed needs lina. A person has to stay in Jerusalem. Some want to say, some Rishonim actually understand this. It doesn't just mean the first day. It means that the person has to stay the entire Chag. And he can only go back Isru Chag Day. He has to say the Isru Chag night and go back on Isru Chag Day. Allah, it seems to be like there was Rishonim who say that the first night they have to stay, and then they can go back on the first day of Chol HaMoed. So this is the Gemara for today. As Hashem, we will continue next time.